for nearly 34 and a half years I've been here.
What inspired you to come to St. Maarten?
Well, I wanted to have the opportunity to start an insurance company from scratch, and that opportunity presented itself when I was offered the opportunity to come and run this company, as its chief underwriter and from scratch. Even way back in Guyana, when I was working at then GTM, I had already held discussions with a few of my colleagues in Guyana when I was just 24 at the time about starting an insurance company in Guyana. We wanted to start our own insurance company, and the sentiments were not necessarily good at the time. First of all, the opportunity to do it was a bit tough because the government in Guyana had not too long before that had started their own insurance company called the GCIS, Guyana Cooperative Insurance Services, and therefore the Guyana insurance industry had appeared as though it was moving more towards a government run insurance rather than more private insurance companies. So that was one deterrent, and the other deterrent, of course, would have been to raise the capital necessary. And I only had one investor that was willing to raise the funds or to put up his share of the funds. And therefore, while I was exploring the opportunity, and the hurdles seemed to be very high, I got this opportunity. I was a very good friend of mine told me about this job, told me about the opportunity in St. Maarten. In addition to that, the principal for the Academy of Insurance in Trinidad, Mr. Bertrand Doyle, the late Mr. Bertrand Doyle, God bless his soul, he also told me about this opportunity in St. Maarten, and I came to St. Maarten to meet the shareholders, because the company was not in operation yet. It was starting from scratch, like I said, and this was exactly what I was really looking for, because I was trying to do this in Guyana. Because in those days the insurance company was run really mostly by the two big giants of GTM in hand. They're mutual companies. They're not privately owned companies as such. And there were a few overseas companies like Colfire and so, the big giants out of Trinidad. And I wanted to start, a company with local shareholders in Guyana. But like I said, the challenges were huge at the time. Governmentally, the messaging I was getting from the ministry was not one that was positive about this, but they would be willing to consider based on the capital and an investment and who will run it and those things. But it was difficult to raise the capital. So when this opportunity came up here in St. Maarten, I was quite happy to take it and take up the opportunity. In addition to the fact that by 1980-81 in Guyana, the situation, the economy was really bad. The guy line became a famous term. You had to line up even for an ounce of salt and a pound of sugar, and I had a 1-year-old son. And those things were beginning to worry me about Guyana. So this was right exactly what I really wanted to do. I wanted to be involved with a company from scratch. I wanted to be able to build a company up into something substantial and lead it to success, and this gave me all the opportunity to do so, and I came and I fell in love with St. Maarten, to be honest. I thought St. Maarten was such a beautiful island. It was a lot more pristine then than now, because it wasn't so built up, and the building up, I don't mind it. It's all part and parcel of progress, right? So I've been here ever since. I'm quite happy.
And could you say what are some of the challenges on arriving at St. Maarten and trying to establish yourself?
Well, first the challenges were that, of course, I was not from here. I didn't know St. Martin very well. I didn't know it at all, and I knew no one here. You know, I know Mr. Beresford. I'd interviewed by him, but he was involved in other things as well. So when I came to St. Martin, you know, he helped a little bit in, as he can. But then I was virtually left alone, you know, and that was very difficult. And having a wife and a child that is just over a year old at the time, it was difficult. And I remember the first 2 months was very, very, very difficult for me, because where I was put up to stay was a very nice place, but it was only a 1-bedroom unit, and it was myself, my wife, and a son. But the amount of rent was almost 75% of my salary, you know, and I felt that, you know, when I do quick mathematics, that if I continue to pay this rent, then I'll be better off back in Guyana. In Guyana, I was already a manager in GTM, and I was doing quite well, and I was getting all kinds of benefits. I could get easy loans to a house and all kinds of opportunities. And I'm here in a foreign land, don't know anybody, don't have too much of support in terms of family and friends around. And the cost of rent was taking most of my pay, and at the end of the month I could barely break even. You know, at least in Guyana I was saving something, even if it's Guyana dollars, I was saving money. You know, so that was very tough. So I had to look around for apartments that are lower cost and more affordable, that would allow me to save some money. And it took me. I went into 4 apartments in 2 months. I moved to 4 places in the first 2 months here. I think that would probably be the most difficult, most challenging part of coming into St. Martin. But in addition to that, I arrived and realized that there was nothing was ready for the insurance company. We had no policies, we had no application forms, we had no systems, we had basically nothing. So I had to spend endless hours. You know, I would work minimum 12 to 16 hours a day. That's 12 hours was minimum. Sometimes we go to 16, 18 hours a day, because I was like, you know, the most important person in every division of the company. I had 2 girls that was helping me with clerical work. There was 1 person dealing some accounting and so on. But the other 2 insurance persons were just young clerical people that was even younger than I and didn't know too much about the insurance business. So I had to be the underwriter, the claimsman, the policy drafter, the salesman, go out and get the business, and so on. And it was very tough. I devised a system where I would stay in the office every morning up to lunch, and every afternoon I'll hit the road. I'll deal with claims if they come in. I will go and meet clients, not really just cold calling, just knock on people's doors and ask them if they're interested in insurance. The stores and the streets, and drive around the island that I hardly knew, meeting people I don't know. But then, eventually it works. People start to have confidence in the company, and they were able to buy into what I was trying to achieve. And I built a name, I think, based on trust and good faith. People knew that they could trust me, and I keep my word about everything I say, everything I do, and up to this day, I think people know that if Macsood tell you something, it's gospel. If I shake your hand, that's good enough. I don't need a signed piece of paper. And up to this day, people still see me that way, and I like that. So those were the early tough, difficult days, and not to mention the company started with only $75,000, which was I tell people at the end of the first month I was here, we had $12,256 in the bank, and it was very scary because one big total loss vehicle and we were bankrupt. We were, so the options were not great. We had to really challenge ourselves to go out there, and myself and the two girls worked very hard and with me. They still work with me, by the way. And I'm very proud of them. And one is a manager, one is in a supervisory level, and they're doing super. And I would say that those days were tough days, because I have to be looking at the financial side on the one hand, I have to look at the reinsurance side on the other hand. We had a reinsurance guy that was here as a consultant, but he got sick of cancer and died, within a year after I was here. So I had to do that as well and try to make sure that I put all these things in place. And then you have to go out and get the business, and then there are claims to deal with. And I was like, the old Guyana or English term, chief cook and bottle washer. I was it. So I know what that means. And those days, but you learn from these things, and I look back with great pride and in many ways thanks that it was how it was, because it taught me many things, and it taught me how to survive in the most difficult circumstances.
You started the company with $75,000.
Right.
Today, how much your company values?
Well, the gross assets of the company is $250 million US, and the equity, which is the net assets, about $100 million US.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And what is your greatest inspiration to achieve this?
Well, I think I always was a very ambitious, passionate guy about what I do. I think that one's passion definitely is one's greatest strength, or weakness. In this case, it was a great strength of mine. I loved the insurance business, and I loved the challenge of doing what I was doing. I had great pride in building something out of nothing, basically, and I am a voracious reader. Even in those days they didn't have computers, so you had to rely on reading everything, and I would subscribe to magazines and pay it from my own pocket, right? Insurance magazines, buy books. I read everything from Dale Carnegie to, John Maxwell to Warren Buffett. I've read and followed all these people over the years, and in many ways I find inspiration in what other people have done, and I realize that if you have the passion, you add a bit of strategy, and you add a whole heap of effort, and you will succeed.
And how many employees have you grown by over the years? You started off with about 3, yourself included?
Right.
And today, how much?
Well, there were more than 3. There was another lady that was doing some basic accounting, and there was a guy doing some basic reinsurance. But 1 year after the lady, she left, because we had a small company with 75,000. We couldn't keep everybody. The reinsurance guy got sick, and then he died. And then, I started to build my own small team because of the financial side, and so. But in principle, it was myself and these 2 girls that were involved in the insurance side of the business. We did the insurance, we did the policies, we did the claims, we did everything, basically. So today we have, that's about over 350. I've lost count, but it's more than 350 throughout the Caribbean. As you know, we operate now in about 26 islands in the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of the makeup of your staff, how are they make up in terms of the nationalities?
Well, in St. Martin, the vast majority, of course, are St. Martiners. And in every territory where we are, the staff are mainly from the island where we operate. But there are quite a broad cross-section of people. So in this main office, because this is the head office that runs the operations for the entire group, there are so many different nationalities. I once made a point that I believe that I employ at least one person from every single English-speaking island in the Caribbean. I have people working with me from Guyana, Trinidad, Barbados, Jamaica, Turks, Cayman. They have people from all over the region, you name it, and everywhere in between. I have people working with me that would have originated either as a consultant or as an employee from almost every English-speaking country in the region, probably with the exception of Bermuda. I don't have anybody working with me from
What
Bermuda.
was the insurance sector like here when you arrived in St. Martin? Did it exist?
Oh yes, it did. It's very competitive actually. We had like 19 companies operating here. Very small island, but there were mostly agencies. Yes, I was starting at ground zero.
At ground zero. And today, where would you rate yourself among those in the insurance sector today?
Here in St. Martin, we are number one by a long distance. Right. Our number two in non-life business, because we're primarily a non-life company. We only started recently in life insurance, and we bought the British American business of the Dutch Antilles, and we are going into the life business now. But in non-life business, probably whatever premiums we write in St. Martin, the number two company here probably do only about 15% of that premium.
And how many companies are there now?
Now there are about 10, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't really keep an exact number. I'm interested in the competition. I always try to follow what they do because I'm a firm believer that your competition make you better. So I follow it, but I don't really keep numbers on my fingers how much they are. I mostly concentrate on who's trying to do what to me and try to do better than them. But so we're by a long distance number one. The number two, like I said, is probably writing maybe 15, maximum 20% of what we are writing.
Mr. Macsood, the world has changed, particularly since 2011, because of the whole concerns about the financing of terrorism and money laundering and so on.
2001.
2001, sorry. Right. 2001.
Yeah.
What are some of the major challenges in terms of the regulatory environment for a company such as yours?
Well, the regulatory environment has changed significantly, and honestly, I think for the better. But of course, there are always going to be situations when you get knee-jerk reactions. Sometimes things might be even overdone and overblown a little. But the regulations are very important, and I am glad that regulators are taking a very close eye on all matters of regulation. To me, nowadays the way the regulators are looking at insurance companies and banks as well, that the likes of Stanford will not will no longer be possible. Well, you never know what is possible, but at least it makes it more difficult for the Stanfords of the world to come and create all kind of financial schemes and the way he did it. And in the case of, let us say, the collapse of Clico and so on, and British American, because of the non-core concentrations, businesses, people lose sight of what their business is that cause a lot of these companies to collapse. And there are several other companies in the region that have sold or a bit shaky and so on. Regulations are going to really cause a problem for a lot of these companies. As far as NAGICO is concerned, I'm not concerned about it. I welcome the regulations. We're a highly capitalized company. Our solvency ratios are many, many, many times, hundreds of times more than what most regulators want. We have a whole risk and compliance department. My risk and compliance division is quite large and huge. We're one of the few companies with a chief risk officer on board, with a head of compliance. Our head of compliance has been a regulator before in the Turks and Caicos, in the BVI, in Anguilla, in Montserrat, in Chile, so we have some. Our chief risk officer has been the president of the Risk Management Association of the Caribbean. So I'm not at all concerned about those things. Of course, they can be very demanding and therefore time-consuming in what I consider non-core activity. Because sometimes, because I'm a die-hard insurance man, I prefer to spend my energies doing insurance than worrying about AML and FATCA and all these, various Sarbanes-Oxley rules and all these things. But we have to worry about them. We have to worry about them. We have to take all of it into consideration and put ourselves in a position where that any regulation that we can meet them and we can pass muster no matter who comes. As a matter of fact, I believe we are the only English-speaking company in English-speaking Caribbean that has a license to operate in French territories. And to operate in French territories, you have to go through a very rigorous examination and systems and controls. The French are very bureaucratic, very and for good measure. I'm not saying that it's good, bad or otherwise, but trust me, if you can pass the regulations of the French and the Dutch, you've got to be good.
And by extension, the EU.
The EU, yes. So of course we are part of we are one of the EU companies now as well,
right.
And we can do business in any French territory, and we can do in EU countries as well. What we have to do is register in them. Right now we only do business in France and a little bit in the Dutch overseas territories, Mr.
Macsood, turning our attention now to the Guyanese political environment. As you know, and as we both know,
yes.
Guyana celebrates 50th independence anniversary in just a matter of days. Looking back at those early days of Guyana, what are some of your experiences as an ordinary Guyanese? I know you talked about it earlier, and you credited Dr. Jagan and Mr. Burnham for bringing Guyana to where it is today.
Yes.
Could you tell me what were your experiences back then, working in the business sector in Guyana, just a few short years after Guyana became independent?
Yeah. Well, it might be hard to really give the kind of answer that you might be looking for. I don't know exactly what you're looking for, but I could say that in my days working in Guyana, I started in the insurance business in 1975, so I finished 40 years in the insurance business last year. But in 1975, Guyana had a combination of being tough to live in Guyana, right? But being very happy that you had a decent job in Guyana in an insurance company. I was fortunate, I think, to get into the insurance business and into the insurance and starting to work in the financial industry, whereas a lot of my fellow Guyanese who were just as bright or brighter than me, probably didn't have the same opportunity in a financial organization. So working at a company like GTM was a very good learning experience. I learned a lot of stuff from working in the 6 years I worked at GTM in Guyana, and working along with people like Errol Chung, George Kamash, Arthur Belgrave, who was our general manager at the time. People won't even remember Arthur Belgrave, but people like these were amazing people to work with, and they were very bright, smart people, and I learned a lot from them, following them, and there was a great camaraderie at GTM. A lot of friends I still have. I have friends that I met and made at GTM, and they're still my friends. I have several ex-GTM people working with me throughout the region, right? Here in St. Maarten and other parts of the region. And one of my best friends who had recommended me to come to this job in St. Maarten, he had moved to the United States, and he just retired from his job, and he is a consultant now for NAGICO. He's a top IT professional, and he comes and spends 2 weeks every month here in St. Maarten and working for me, and that kind of relationship I developed working at GTM. I learned the art of doing the business. I learned from people who knew it and knew it well. I learned that service was important. I was happy that I started working in the filing room and then to the front desk, because I got what I called client-facing experience. A lot of people do this business, but they have no, they go to college and get a degree, but they don't know what it is to face the client at the front desk, right? I did it all, and I also graduated and become a chartered insurer. So I went through it. So that experience was great as far as the working experience. Living in Guyana was not so great at that time, because like we were speaking before, I was one of the regular participants in guy lines. You had to join a line for everything. Even if you want a pound of sugar, you join a line. Don't even talk about certain products, and I'm not even talking about whether you want to get sardines or apples and grapes. I'm talking about milk,
rice,
and rice, butter. I remember if that Sterling Products Limited, that there was a gentleman, God bless his soul, he died now, named Michael Gonzalez. You probably know Michael Gonzalez. He used to work at GTM, then hand in hand. And when Sterling Products will come out with butter, we will all line up by Mike Gonzalez and beg him so that you can get one little tub of butter. It was that difficult in Guyana in those days. And of course, having a wife and a small son that was just under a year old, it was a tough experience there, but a very good learning experience. And to be honest, I look back with great pride at those experiences, because it taught me some hard lessons, life lessons. Taught me that coming to St. Maarten and having to work 12, 16 hours a day, but where you could buy anything you want if you have the money, has reward. And bringing the work ethic that I developed at GTM, and the work ethic from Guyana, and the education that Guyana gave to all of us. Guyana's educational level is quite high, and I very pridefully tell people how many teachers we have here in St. Maarten from Guyana. So I enjoyed my years working at GTM. I was happy. I was a happy Guyanese. Like I told you before, we have to give a lot of credit. We could say what we want about their political views and behaviors and what have you, but people like Dr. Jagan and Forbes Burnham and so have done so much for a lot of us, because they paved the way so that colonialism did not take away from our opportunities. They allowed the average Guyanese to flourish and to become something by making us an independent country. And independence have that value. Everybody wants to feel independent at some point, and independence has its negatives, yes. But I think independence for Guyana was a great thing that happened to Guyana, because, like I said, whether we like it or we not, many Guyanese would probably not be in the positions they are all around the world, and right in Guyana as well, if we did not go for independence, so that we don't remain being controlled by a colonial master. So I always treat our independence with great pride. And I was so happy when somebody came to me and said, let's do something for Guyana's 50th anniversary. Hey, that was a no-brainer to me. So just do it. Right.
Mr. Macsood, in our informal conversation, you did refer to the difficulty and the subsequent success that certain sections of the Guyanese community had experienced in terms of their own upward mobility because of the color of their skin. Mm-hmm. Tell me a bit about that experience.
Well, I think that was a long time back. I'm not sure that is happening now. But in a long time back, what I do know, for example, is that I was told, I don't have it in a piece of paper, I didn't keep the register of GTM, but what I was told that, shockingly, that the first clerical person of Indian origin that worked at GTM in Guyana was a guy by the name of Nanroy Singh in 1965. And to me that tells you a whole story, and that there were also several black persons that would have worked, Afro-Guyanese, that but they were working in the messenger room or in the delivery room, but they were not in high clerical positions and management and what have you. And you wouldn't see managers and supervisors and so by 1965. Well, let's take the 1966. Independence year 1966. You couldn't go to GTM in 1966 and find managers that are of Indian or Afro-Guyanese origin, and that should be, and I think it was the same for other companies, NBS, the banks, maybe hand in hand. I don't know of everybody, but I do know that I was told this from very reliable sources, that in 1966, in independence of 1966, you couldn't find in GTM anyway, in the head office of GTM, Afro or Indian Guyanese in top management positions. You couldn't find it. So that probably is a clear example of what I meant when I say that independence brings a lot of value, and I don't blame any of my Portuguese, Chinese, or other brothers, white brothers or so in Guyana for any of this, because that was the system. I'm sure none of them set about trying to be, to deliberately keep people out, but people were being employed, I think, and I was told in those days, based on who is your friend and who is your relative and who is your, before independence. By independence time, then the message of independence is we're all one, right? We're all one. We have to come together, Forbes Burnham, again, whether we like him, don't like him or nothing, but when Guyana became independent and the term was used, one people, one nation, one destiny, I think that sends a perfect message to everybody in Guyana. And it sent a message to the business people in Guyana as well, and sent a message to to all the hierarchies, in all the industry, financial and otherwise, that it's one people, one nation, one destiny, and everybody has to be given opportunities. And I am absolutely sure that independence had that benefit to all of us in Guyana.
Thank you very much.
Okay.